Well, let's talk now then about that big fight between Edwards and Yafai. You and I've been talking about this offline for the past few weeks. These guys have a history with each other. For the people who aren't familiar, what is that background between Sonny Edwards and Gal Yafai?
So it's a bit of a family feud, really. Cal Yafai, who's the eldest brother, and there's three Yafais: Cal Yafai, Gamal Yafai, and Galal Yafai. Lucky I remembered all three of them then and got all of their names right. I am impressed with myself. But Cal Yafai and Sonny Edwards' older brother Charlie, who was the WBC world champion at one point, they never really liked each other one bit. They really, really disliked each other, and it was built for a number of years of these two getting into the ring and settling this feud and the bragging rights and whatever else. And it never happened. Now, Matchroom released a really good little 12, 13, 14-minute documentary, and I think it's called Bloodline or something like that. And it's about that family feud, that family rivalry, and those two meaning to fight each other and it not happening. And both of those talk about on that YouTube little mini doc about why it didn't happen. But now, um, the little brothers are going to settle the score. So that's kind of a little bit of a bit of background and a bit of history to it. How much do you know about this fight in the States? I mean, I know you'll know about it because this is your bread and butter. This is your job. This is your sport. But, do many people know much about this? Is anyone following it really?
We've talked a little bit before about Sonny Edwards and asking how well known he is in the States and whether he's one of these Marmite characters, as we like to say. I think that among the perpetually online boxing fans, people are familiar with Sonny Edwards. He is a mainstay on Twitter. He's pretty good presence there. And I think he's been able to build up a following, even if his style isn't always the most pleasing to what American fight fans are looking for. I think people are less familiar, much less familiar with Yafai. He's been pro for a lot less time. They're aware of the fact that he is an Olympic gold medalist. But I think that there will be a quick education with the packages that Matchroom and DAZN will be putting together. I did a little bit of research for my TV picks piece on Boxing Scene this week, where I break down what's going to be on broadcast for people to watch. And I realized, or I hadn't realized, that Sonny Edwards and Gal Yafai also had their own history. They were in an amateur fight with each other in 2015, and Edwards had won, but it was Yafai who went on to the Olympics in 2016. He didn't win that time. He ended up winning the gold medal in 2020, and all that time, Edwards was working his way up to the ranks and won his own world title. So this is a very interesting fight to me, not only because of the history that you espoused and the family rivalry, but also the fact that this is a crossroads fight. Edwards is coming. He's going to be 2 fights removed now from that loss to Bam Rodriguez last year, where he lost his world title. This fight is going to be for an interim WBC belt at 112, which is kind of weird given that Kenshiro Taraji just won that belt, the real belt, a little bit back. But Yafai, meanwhile, he needs a big name on his record in order to move forward. So every fighter always needs a victory, but this fight is going to be the fight that moves one of them forward.
So I speak to Andy Clark about this in the interview quite a lot, but to get your opinion on it, and it'd be interesting to hear what you say as just another voice and another person who follows the sport so closely. Is Galal Yafai is 8-0, and he's an esteemed amateur Olympic gold medalist. Did everything that you could possibly do in terms of the amateur side of the game. So his experience as a pro obviously isn't matched when it comes to his opponent on Saturday, Sonny Edwards, who has had 22 fights, 21 wins. That only loss coming to Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Who does this affect more, in your opinion, if they don't get the win on Saturday? Because if Edwards loses to what a lot of people will see as just an 8-0 fighter, even though he's more than just an 8-0 fighter because of what he's achieved already on the amateur side of it. Is he going to basically be? Are people going to wash their hands of him and think, well, you lost to Rodriguez, you've just lost to an 8-0 fighter, we're kind of done and dusted with you, or does it affect Galal Yafai more because the first time that he steps up in the world level as a pro, he fails to get a victory? What's your opinion on that?
This is an excellent question. I'm glad that you asked it. I think it affects Edwards more. I mentioned his style. I think he does have fan support in the UK, but when it comes to getting world title shots, losing to Bam Rodriguez, there's no shame in losing to a pound for pound talent. But then losing to a younger fighter on their way up, that would be a big setback. Now, do I think that Edwards could get back into it? Yeah, of course. I mean, he's got the mouth to be able to earn himself fights. I think he's got the style to win eliminators, and we are in a sport where there are four world titles, and you can work your way up through the rankings. That being said, I think that he would very quickly have to be the B side and potentially have to travel. You look at who the title holders are: Kinshir Taraji, Sega Akui, Angel Ayala, and Anthony Elascuaga, and those are all guys that are overseas, whether that's in Japan or the United States or in Mexico. So a loss means that Edwards would have to work his way up, or would potentially have to consider a move to 115. And I don't know that he has the size or the power to compete there. As for Yafai, if he was to lose, I think it would, of course, be a setback. People would wonder if he'd hit his ceiling. And so much of that depends on how he loses. But I think about a guy like Vasily Lomachenko. When you've got these guys who have lengthy amateur careers and turn pro later in life, they have this compressed timeline for development. And Yafai is 31. He's actually older than Sonny Edwards, who's 28. So he's in his physical prime, but he's going to be learning on the job. You know, Lomachenko lost to Orlando Salido in his second fight and then went on to win in his third fight. If Yafai loses and loses competitively or loses in a way where he can make improvements, I could still see him coming back at 32, 33, 34 years old and putting on a better performance with the lessons learned.
Yeah, for me, I think this just it depends on how the fight plays out, and I won't go into it too much because again, it's a bit of the convo with Andy, which we'll all get to listen to in just a moment. But I think it depends on the nature of the win for both of them, doesn't it? And it could also, if it's a great fight, if it's a really good fight, no matter what the result is, then if it's close and it's all action and they both show loads of stuff, which is impressive, then it's going to be a kind of good news story for both of them, I think, or it can be. There's lots of positives to be found.
Yeah, it's a very interesting fight. And I think it's the kind of fight that, while it might seem to some people to be a domestic affair to UK fighters, it has an impact on the sport going forward. And it is potentially entertaining both for the drama of it, the storyline, as well as for the action. I'm also intrigued about the fact that Sonny Edwards admitted that he started training camp without having a trainer in his corner. I don't know whether you saw that or what you thought of it.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about that. My understanding is that he's doing some training with a guy called Chris Williams in Liverpool, who isn't the most well-known trainer. He's not a Joe Gallagher or a Ben Davison or a Shane McGuigan or whatever else. I mean, that doesn't really matter. It's kind of how best a relationship suits a fighter, and how they progress and how they perform off of the back of that. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe maybe that'll be one of the things which is spoken about if Sonny Edwards doesn't go on to get the win. But he's a shrewd character. He's a clever kid. He knows what he's doing, and yes, he is Marmite. 100% he is Marmite, but I don't think he makes his decisions without really giving them some thought. So yeah, we'll it's really intriguing, really, really intriguing.